How are you?
I'm very well. How are you, Bryson?
Good.
Um, it's um, it's a busy life these days.
You were busy all summer, so can I ask what you were doing?
Sure, sure. I'm getting ready to work on a couple of plays
Uh-huh.
that will take place in New York on Broadway.
Oh, wow, how cool.
Yeah, I was doing that. I'm going to work. I am working on a fabulous new production of Waiting for Godot with Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter. And somehow they were invited to think about this. And I think they're completely into it right now. And it will take place in about a year. But believe it or not, we're beginning the research and the preparation because it takes so long to really embody a character. And anyway, and I am going to base it with the Alexander technique and everything that it brings in, into building a character. That's why I have integrated what I teach in the process of acting.
So this is fascinating. So you're hired to work with Keanu Reeves and the other actor, or just are you specific working with just one person?
Right now, well, let me give you some history.
Yeah.
When I became an Alexander teacher in the 1980s, I was trained in San Francisco by Frank Ottewell and Giora Pincus at their center in San Francisco. And I had been training as an actor at ACT, the American Conservatory Theater. That's
Mhm.
how I met Frank. And the Alexander technique, since the 1965, had been integrated in the training of actors.
Mhm.
In fact, it was so important to William Ball, he was the artistic director, to have Alexander technique that everybody in the company had lessons, private lessons and group classes. Now, you have to remember 1965, basically, for example, Feldenkrais was not even in existence.
Right.
So Alexander was the one, or, Alexander, the first teachers in New York, Judith Leibowitz, brought the Alexander technique to Juilliard, a major new school in drama, and somehow ACT expanded from Philadelphia and New York to San Francisco.
Mhm.
And everyone in the company, not only actors, but even the backstage people,
Wow.
the scene designers, and the crew, they would have lessons.
Wow.
So the Alexander technique was a basic element in how they worked on creating theater. So when I came to the training program, they had a training program for actors. This was, let's see if I can give you a date, 1969. That dates me. And that's when I started my Alexander work. And I fell in love with it because of what I got physically and mentally and emotionally. So, with that, I decided right there and then that I have to train to be a teacher. So, luckily, Frank was there with a training program, and Frank and Giora, who was his partner, trained me.
I had no idea. I knew that Alexander was part of this world, but I didn't know it was that much a part of it. I didn't know it was so fundamental.
Yeah, well, that was it was the first theater company. It is a theater. It's still in existence, but it was a repertory theater. That means that they had like 3 or 4 plays running at the same time. So in a week, he would have many different plays, and the same company played all different kinds of characters. So they had to have a great deal of flexibility and range and voice connection and breath connection. So they felt the Alexander technique, that's what it gave you. And you have to remember that Alexander discovered it not because of science or there was no such thing as integrative health. He did it because he wanted to gain his voice back. He was losing his voice, and he wanted to be an actor. So his primary goal was to be able to act Shakespeare. So that's what I have very similar problems.
Very similar. You had the same problems?
Yeah, yes, it was a vocal thing. I had asthma, severe asthma. So when I first had a lesson was in New York in a class. I had no idea what I was getting into. I thought it has something to do with Alexander the Great. And I thought we would have to wear togas at some point. But that's my fantasy. But then I realized that it had a lot to do with becoming aware of your body, uh, being able to make some changes in one's consciousness, and be able to direct that clarity of thinking in your acting as a character. So that to me was fascinating. And my asthma, my chronic asthma, in a matter of a few months, diminished so much that now I could run and I could take dance classes. But prior to that, I would lose my breath all the time.
Interesting. That's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. No, so I'm excited when someone with asthma or breathing problems comes to me because I know if not totally eradicate asthma, it can be very helpful.
And what do you um why is this? Why do you think so? Why does the Alexander technique help you with your asthma?
Well, yes, I can. The breathing mechanism is completely connected to the use of the self. So, according to how you use your body and your nervous system, that is reflected directly to the breathing mechanism. So often, the breathing mechanism cannot be dealt with directly. You have to look at the whole person. What is the whole person doing? What is the manner of your use in life, moment by moment by moment? But then you have to realize what's happening to your eating habits, and what you're eating may literally affect your immune system and the breathing mechanism. So to me, getting more organized in my body, more easy in my body, started to shift how I was breathing and the level of depth in my breathing.
Yeah, so it's many things. It's not just the focusing. Like right now, there's so many breath techniques and stuff out there. I think people miss the subtlety of the Alexander technique because they want the one to one.
Yeah, well, what they're doing is they're end gaining and
Yes.
going for the result rather that breathing is a process that is delicate, as you coined the right word. It is a delicate, um, overreaching process that affects everything that you do. And the first thing that we do when we come to our lives, we take our first breath. The last thing we do in our lives, we take the last breath. The important thing is, how are we breathing continually? That is the fun part of it all.
I love to talk to Alexander teachers and people in this world because the lingo comes back because I don't always work with Alexander trained people.
Sure.
So like in gaining, I love it all. It's like people when you try use of the self, people are like, "What are you talking about?"
Exactly. Oh, well, the use of the self is so basic that it just goes over people's awareness of what does that mean? What is the self?
Right. Yeah. I just wrote an article on it this morning and I was like, well, I hope they get it. I don't know. If they read, they'll understand what I'm saying. So let me ask you, um, why do you so if you're in I think that we normally think like, okay, they're dancing and they're acting, so the embodiment's going to be there. Why would you need this in addition to that? Wouldn't that do it?
Oh, yeah, great question. Well, what I'm totally fascinated is being true to the playwright or the screenwriter. They have a story, and a good story has great characters. And character to me is a very fascinating area. I love to bring characters to life. Now, what does that mean? To me, what it means is that you get a script and you read it, right? You read it. I'm looking for one right now. But you get a script, you read it, and you say, now, it's a great story, but I have to bring this character from the page to life in my body, in space, in time, and in sound. How do you do that? It's not an automatic process. It's actually very complicated. Um, most people, most actors, what they do is they just use themselves. And so whatever habits they have in their own life, they give it to the character. And sometimes it works. If the character is very similar to who you are and what your life is like, I have found that most characters have very different way of thinking and very different ways of moving and very different ways of speaking. And sometimes they live in other times, in other historical times. So you have to consider all these things. So what happens, which is really fun, that's the fun part, is that you have to realize what is the same and what is different. So in the play, if you are a warrior or you're a soldier, but you're not a soldier in your real life, you better study everything that a soldier does and what is their lives and what are the training and where does it take place. If you are a soldier in Japan, I promise you it's going to be very different than being a soldier in America. Or so there are different customs and different ways of thinking, different language. So all these things require the actor to go outside habit and really creatively build a character. And you better be not only aware of your body, but flexible enough that you can alter your body. Maybe you walk fast in your everyday life, but the character in this movie walks very slowly. And sometimes a writer will say the character walks deliberately and slowly, and every step counts. that is different from your habitual way of walking. So the challenge for the actor, and the creative challenge, most actors love this, is to begin to shift and step into the world of the character. So the Alexander technique can be so helpful to an actor just on a fundamental basis. I mean, there are other things that you have to do. You might have to alter your voice, the pitch of your voice. You may have to learn, fighting styles of that period, how to hold this sword, that weighs a lot. And you may have to alter the way that your costume is. Let's say that we're talking about the 17th century. Then you have to learn how do these people wear their costumes, and how do they move in them, and how healthy were they? So even the health aspects are very different. So that's what I love doing. So then you can integrate the fighting training that has to come in, the customs and style of the period because of the costumes and how people lived, and really create a different person. So there's a lot involved in creating a character.
So to delineate here a little bit, so like dance and theater or some athletics or some more sort of movement practice can create a level of self-awareness or embodiment, but that doesn't mean you're going to recognize your habits.
Absolutely not. Uh, because often when you go and take a movement class, you're taking a movement class with your habits, and in order to be able to be more flexible, more open, more limbered, you have to slowly reorganize your body and release the amount of tension, um, the amount of grit. Some people their movements are kind of gritty and limited, And what if you're playing a prince or a princess? You have to move with elegance and ease. Um, and often, I use animals as a way of inspiring a different kind of movement. So sometimes we do that, but in order to do that, again, you need a certain amount of openness and flexibility that comes from doing work in the Alexander technique, the ease of movement.
Two things here. I don't want to lose it. One is that this is really the doorway of the Alexander technique, right? A kind of self-awareness,
Yes,
learning about our habits and use. Because most people don't question it. They're like, I just get up and out of the chair for the classic Alexander thing. But then you say, how do you get out of that chair? And people are just spun. Like, what do you mean, how? And then this whole journey opens up.
exactly. That's the most fascinating, the how. Uh, the manner of use, or maybe the quality. Have you ever heard of Marjorie Barstow?
Oh, yes, of course.
So I studied 11 years with Marjorie, and
Mm.
she was a dancer, a
Mhm.
ballet dancer. So she was very clear about the quality that it takes to move. So she taught me to really be able to focus on a particular kind of quality that is free of restrictions and free of grit, you know. And when you teach it, what most people say when they're doing it, they say it's effortless, or they'll say it's so easy to move this way. It's so continuous and fluid that I could go in any direction, anytime. I could actually stop if I wanted to and kind of freezing space, or they say I could just continue and go to the end of the phrase, so to speak. To me, that is fascinating. When I work a lot with musicians, they understand it immediately. They say, oh, it's like playing a musical phrase. You know, it's written this way, and this is the way that I have to play it. It's in the notes. It's right there. You can see how the notes go. And in a way, that's what you teach, you know, actors to do. But I think it really is useful for anybody.
Oh yeah.
You know, everybody can use this kind of clarity
Hmm.
of movement.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's and I use it a lot with I teach a lot of movement people for like Tai Chi and the different going Chinese arts, and it's you see the almost parallel the ideas.
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
and actually I think there's a lot of the history of the Chinese arts or a lot of theater actually.
Exactly.
There was this mixing and mashing between those two. Um, the interesting thing though you said, well, many all everything, but the one that I wanted to focus on for a minute was this idea of changing movement through the mind, like through attitude, like by assuming or by becoming an animal, your movement begins to change, or by becoming the queen, your movement begins to change along. Now that's a thought that seems, I think, for the normal person to be like, well, that's not a body thing, that's a mental thing. And it seems like the theater is particularly interesting here because if you teach Alexander technique to just somebody off the street, that might not be there because it's not, they don't have training in this. Like, how do I become somebody else? I am who I am.
Uh, Fascinating. Actually, I have worked with, I'm working now with a few women that are very powerful in their professional lives, right? I'm thinking of this woman, Mary, who's a lawyer. She's a power lawyer, you know, and she is the principal person in the law firm. So when she comes in with a character, and this is a powerful person. She always wears pants and a suit, you know, and she's playing a character. And then, but she's also a mother. So when she goes home and she is making dinner for her son, she's definitely has a very different way of speaking to him. Probably her whole body changes posture and her rhythm is differently. But then when her hubby comes home and has a little glass of wine with her, and all of a sudden, hey, you know, let's have some fun now. The lover is coming out, you know. So in a day, she can play, you know, 3, 4 different characters. People, regular people, do not fully understand what makes a character, but they are playing different characters. So you know, with actors, you know, it's a compressed amount of time on the page, so they have to really be a lot more what's the word, energized in how they play this character, and it has to be clear, you know, to fulfill the story. So definitely actors are much more they work more clearly to build a character that fulfills the scene or the intention of the character within the story. In life, it's a little bit more extended and elongated, and perhaps a little bit more subtle.
Yeah. But I think this is a really interesting part of the training, and I don't know many other disciplines that go there, because it's like, let's take the example of the mom. It's like that the lawyer can certainly interfere with the dinner making sometimes. Like you can be
Yes.
holding the stress of the workday and then be sharp with the kids or something, or not accommodating with the husband or whoever it is, like that we can't shift out of these roles. Or like if somebody comes to me and they want to do Alexander technique and they're very anxious, the learning that you can shift, that is indeed a role and you can shift out of it. There's a lot of freedom if you allow yourself to be more fluid. And like the actor, maybe I think that training is so useful. Like, oh, be this thing now. I don't have to be angry right now. I can be happy right now, even though I was just angry, and learning how to make those switches.
Absolutely. In fact, you are bringing something up that's very, very important. It is that, especially in our lives today, there's a lot of anxiety, tension, pressure. There's a lot of pressure on everybody
Mm-hmm.
to not only succeed, but also to do different things in our lives. Um, that pressure often for most people is unconscious,
Right.
and they do not know why they're getting headaches all the time, or they do not why, as you said, that there's pressure, and then when you are mothering or being with your kids, you're angry with your kids and you don't know why is that happening.
Mm-hmm.
um, so that's the value of what Alexander had to offer. And often that is not present in teaching, which frustrates me a lot as a teacher.
Sure.
And maybe it is because I am getting a little bit older and wiser, and maybe I'm getting better as a teacher to understand that life, work, and the private self are all integrated. There's no real division. You're using yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I think you need to see how you can switch that energy, how you can direct it, and what are the tools to do that? What are the tools that everybody can learn?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because and it's so interesting that our movement reflects our mind.
Absolutely. Oh my God. The psychophysical, the mind and the body are constantly doing a little dance, and you shift something in your thought and immediately it reflects in the texture and quality of your movement and how you feel, and vice versa. That as you change the ease in your body, your mind is changed also quite fast. Actually, it's amazing.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting because I've met different people who choose to go down either of the two roads. Like I had one person on, his name's Paulie Zink, and he was a master in the monkey gong fu.
uh,
He became that monkey, and the way he moved is really unbelievable. Like I've never seen a human being move like him, and there was no question in my mind that I was witnessing a monkey move around. It was not no longer Paulie Zink.
wow, his name is Polly Zink.
Yeah. I had him. I interviewed him on the show, but there's video of him. He won all these competitions out in California in the '80s for doing these
Amazing.
unbelievable.
Amazing.
Yeah, and
I love that.
I love it too. But this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, because it's like, well, this seems for as far as the Alexander technique goes, it's like you're really in that world where the actors are really taking on different personas, and how that affects the technique through your experience.
So some actors that I've worked with over the years, one in particular, I don't know if you know her, Margot Robbie. I've worked with Margot Robbie now since 2016, and every role that she does, every film she does, I'm the first person that she sees. And needless to say, she's incredibly sensitive in her body and a very healthy person. And her mind and her body and her emotions and her intellect, everything is so well proportioned in a way. I mean, she's figured out a way of being so many different things all in one person, and she's doing it. She's totally doing it, and she's remarkable in that way. That she will always be ready to shift and to be open and to be of service. She's one of the most present person I've ever met. You know, if you call her, she'll call. You'll get a response in a matter of a few hours. And she's one of the top actors in the world, and she's still so present in how she carries herself. It's amazing.
That's wonderful. I like how you said balance there, because I think that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about, and everybody can do it.
Yeah.
They just need to learn a bit of discipline. So if you were to ask me, this is an important thing, what are the things that are needed today? What are the things that everybody needs? The first thing that I would say, people need to say to themselves, I have time. Because most people think that they have no time, and it's crazy, right? And so even if you're very busy, you have to say to yourself, I still have to breathe. I have to be conscious. I have to be in my body. So all of that will take time. It won't take as much time as you think it does. That's the interesting part of it. The other thing that everybody needs is to relate to space, how to relate to space, and have a sense of close space and far, far away space. I tell people to look at where the horizon is in terms of relating to the sky and the land or the ocean. If you can see that right now, and then come back to close to your face, like here, and then go over there, that relationship will help you not only deal with objects and the environment more clearly and balance your body, coordinate your body, have more balance, but it will also help you have better relationships. Most people have very, very poor ability of that. The other thing that everybody needs is to understand their breathing mechanism and voice, because the voice relates to the breathing mechanism. It's the energy behind your ideas, right? And young people right now are having a horrible time with it. Horrible time. They're not breathing, they're not voicing themselves as clearly. And it has a lot to do with phones, it has a lot to do with technology. And the past 5 years, 5, 6 years, it's been terrible for them. We have to help them. Do you have children?
No, I have a puppy.
No. Oh, you have a puppy. Well, you have a kid, a furry kid.
Yeah, no. The time thing is really interesting because I believe when people don't think they have time, this there's a tension there, which is going
Yes.
to affect the breathing, the voice, the relationships, and perspective. Because when we don't have time, it's this. We're very close and everything's happening very fast. Where if we're able to, I like to think of it like a camera, like you have close focus, but then you can landscape. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what gives us our ability to breathe and be like, oh, this problem isn't that bad in this big scheme of things. This is just right now, and this will pass. This is the bigger picture. I mean, we already know this, but learning how to do it, we're stuck. Our aperture's stuck for so many people.
Absolutely. It teaches definitely empathy. You know, you're a teacher, I'm a teacher. Our big question when someone comes to work with us is, what's going on with you? How do you learn? How do you understand? How can I reach you? So immediately our own body, like some sort of antenna, begins to feel the other person with our body, right? And then when you're doing that, you begin to be aware of the earth and how you're organizing yourself in relationship to gravity. But then it expands, especially when they start moving, when you're watching people moving and you moving yourself, you begin to realize, oh, space, right? And we're fortunate. That is the wonderful gift that life has given the two of us, is that we treasure the ability to move and be sensorially aware and kinesthetically more sophisticated in how we're balancing with tension and pressures. We're playing with it, right? Most people, they have no idea about the pleasure that comes from this, right? So, but you can teach it. You can teach someone to feel that and to become curious about it. Curious enough that they may want to do it the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think that's right. I love how you put empathy with sensations and space. It's like that is so key
Yeah,
instead of some dry intellectual idea. Like this is a real thing, and your world begins to open up, and we become literally more selfless, which begins to let go of that tension. If I'm focused not on myself, or as heavily not as focused on myself, I begin to release that load and experience freedom in a way that when I'm me,
yes,
so my world's so small, I'm so tense, and that's really just a lack of empathy or understanding what
absolutely.
that is.
And to take it one step further, empathy is the ability to also to place your hands on another human being to feel them even more deeply as to what's going on inside the coordination and how all the organs are functioning, and vice versa, that they feel us with the right kind of touch. The person that you're working with can actually feel your energy and the quality of that energy and the breathing that you're doing, and they can begin to actually copy you. Say, "Oh God, I don't know what you're doing, but boy, I just feel more spacious. I don't know what you just did." But basically, what I just did, I created more space in myself, and they're getting the resulting energy through my hands. So their own nervous systems begins to match what they're feeling. Um, that to me, that is the greatest level of empathy or gift to someone else. But you have a dog. I bet your dog often puts his own body on your body. Animals have an automatic, once they feel that you're part of their family, all they want to do is connect with you physically. And I have two cats, and they do it constantly with each other and to me. And the first thing, when I feel them touching my body, my breathing immediately begins to get deeper, because it feels good to be that direct with another being, and there's no words involved. It's all about feeling, and it's so powerful. And I worry about our society being more separate, people being more separate, being afraid to touch, especially children, because I have no idea how all this, the lack of touching and understanding what touch is, and the lack of comfort in it, what will it do to the next generations, so I guess us, the two of you, the two of us, our job is really to bring in this clarity and this comfort in terms of touching and feeling, and what that is, what the importance of sensation.
Well, I think that's the key. And when we're in community like that and interconnected, I mean, we're supporting one another. And the animals inherently know that. It's like we're group beings, like we're social beings, and you don't get that on a screen. You get a lot of information, but none of that. And I think it wrecks our nervous system. I think it makes us anxious and a little paranoid, actually, where when we're with somebody, we're supported in any capacity. I remember when I used to work, I was a teacher for a while, and I worked in Istanbul.
Ah,
And one of the first things they said to me was, I know you come from the West, but here the students hug the teachers. I had first graders and kindergartners. They're like, and if you don't, the parents will let you know, why don't you like my child? So you have to be okay with the kids coming up and holding your hand and hugging you and wanting that. And they're going to do it to each other. And sure enough, you would see, friends, men and women going down the street in Eastern Turkey holding hands, and no big deal, hands around shoulders. It was a much more connected culture physically, which was so refreshing. I enjoyed my time there so much just for that one aspect.
that's beautiful. That really is beautiful. I'm so happy to hear that. Istanbul has a very special place in my life. My dad was born there.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I have a very special feeling for the
yeah.
people there.
Yeah,
It's
me
a
too.
it's a very, very special place.
It's a beautiful place. I absolutely loved my time there. It's a one, yeah, very special place. Oh, that's wonderful. I didn't know. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, what other questions you might have about the application of the Alexander work to acting or to storytelling?
Yeah. Well, you piqued my interest at the beginning with
Yeah,
Keanu Reeves in this particular thing, because I know that he's into meditation and stuff, and this seems like a very meditative role. So,
exactly. So he was one of my first students when I
oh,
graduated from the training program, and I moved to LA. And I knew nobody there, and it was. I have no idea how he came to me, but I think it was his best friend, Alex Winter, who actually, he started as a dancer, and his mom is a yoga teacher and a dancer, and I believe his dad is also a dancer. And so he had a very physical story and life before he met me. And so he studied Alexander, and he was also directing a film. It was the first time. So he needed Alexander to be able to be a better director. So, I remember that Keanu was going to play Buddha in Bertolucci's Little Buddha. and he had just done Bill and Ted's Adventures. So it was a different world for him, India, and being a spiritual leader. So he said, I just want to be able to have a long spine and be comfortable in my body. And it was very funny because he would come to his lessons riding his motorcycle, and he was sort of like a rock and roller, but I knew right away that he was a deep person.
Mhm.
And not only that he studied it for a certain amount of time, but he started telling everybody about me. So in a matter of a year, I had a full practice thanks to him. And of course, now that we've come back together and we're working together, he doesn't recall any of this. Just like, say, God, I don't remember all this. It just, it's been years, but it's fun. We love it. We love it. He's a great guy. He really is.
So instead of asking you like a specific thing about the Alexander technique, so since you brought this up about the long spine, so how would you help him accomplish that through the Alexander technique?
Well, first, what I did is made him aware of how he was using his body, and the way that he was using his body was to, like all young people, he would slouch quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
He would just settle into himself, and he would collapse and kind of hold his head with his hand, and usually it was because he was tired. Like he would stay up late at night, and then during in the morning, it would take him a whole day to
Yeah.
re-energize himself. And I said, as an actor, that's going to be a problem,
Yeah.
especially with Buddha. So we worked. I really helped him to begin to shift the relationship between his head and spine in a very delicate way, especially as you know, the Alexander technique is very focused on the balance between the skull and the spine, the primary control. And I did that by yes, using my hands literally on him, but also by telling him that he could initiate an action by leading with the head and the spine. And that was a different thing because he had never thought of mobilizing his head and spine to do any kind of activity. You know, he plays the guitar, so he just plays the guitar with whatever is happening here. But he learned to play the guitar by mobilizing a little bit his head neck relationship and then working his fingers. It was a different way of playing altogether. Uh, but it was so delicate and so easy. And we laughed a lot. He's a very funny person. So he was able to shift his habit by actually having fun doing it. I mean, part of that's why the Alexander works so well. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun to feel better in your own activities. Um, so I taught him to do that, but I told him that he had to learn to do this by himself. It was great to have a lesson, but then you have to teach a lesson so the person feels that they can do it themselves. So I let him play his guitar by literally mobilizing his head a little bit and lengthening his spine and then beginning to play.
I love this example, A, because it's the Buddha and the Buddha has a long spine. It's like
Exactly.
there's a teaching right there. It's a physical teaching of the Buddha. He don't even need to speak. It's like there's why does he have a long spine? And then like you and I think what you said, like gathering all the energies, it's like
Yeah.
when we have this kind of energetic present, our body becomes more alive when we don't dissipate into stress and tension and worry. And I think less of a self-focus. but then also you hit on something that I think is obvious, but not for most people. It's like that you can lead by the head, meaning we're talking like movement initiation here. We're talking conscious movement in the body, and that we can move something around our awareness and interact with our bodies in a different way than what we normally do. I think that's mind blowing for most people. I don't think they know that's even on the table.
Yes, no, that's very true. But then if you have a really good example, and a good example is a lioness ready to hunt, right? So what you see a lioness do first is they don't run right away. They sit there and they watch the animals. And what they're doing is their heads get a little bit longer because they have to see on the horizon where the animals are. And their eyes get bigger and their ears are very directed towards where the animals are. And the whole spine tends to shift the posture, and they are very attentive. So in a way, their spine got longer because they are alert. It has to do with alertness and picking up more information and orienting themselves as to where they are and how distant they are to the animals, their prey. So when their prey are ready and they're close enough, then they attack. But it's this use of their heads and spine, this lengthening of the head and the spine, is to become more alert and to be ready. It's an organizing factor to activity. But I see that in Olympic athletes. I watch the athletes in the Olympics, and they all do it before they do an action or they do their performance. Like the diver, stays there and it's organizing itself. Or runner, same thing. They all do it so then they can go into activity.
And this is really another form of it's empathy again. It's not how we normally think about it, but it truly is. There's a selflessness there where you enter into a relationship with something other.
Exactly. It is always getting into a relationship with the environment or others, um, whatever it is that, even the activity, you are organizing to go into this activity, and it is really a very generous action, very generous action for you to use yourself in such a way that you can do the activity better.
So you just said, back to the lioness example, which is great. I just had one of my teachers the other day talk about a tiger and how when they observe the opponent, we should be like the tiger because our core and everything, our big muscles will line up around that idea.
Absolutely.
And that's so crazy. You said you just this 2 days ago. So your view then is by engaging like this, the rest of our body will follow suit.
Absolutely. Our heads are always connected through the spine and the nervous system to every part of you. So when you are organizing yourself in that way, is a total wholeness that happens to your whole body. And yes, it is a beautiful experience, and it is always different. It's never the same. That's the wild part of it. It's never the same. So it opens up doors to growth that otherwise you wouldn't have. For you to be so alert and involved in whatever it is that you're involved with. So it's a beautiful thing. Um, Very few people do it, unfortunately. I don't know why. Um, the people that do it, they recognize it and they continually keep doing it, so it is possible. It is possible. And I'm hoping that education will change in this country, and that teachers will have the support that they need in order to allow this to happen more in the teaching, and for teachers to be recognized as very, very important people. You know, whether it's in a small, an elementary school or a university, doesn't matter.
This is so important. So many people have come on this program from different backgrounds, different disciplines, and this idea of school comes up a lot, and how that our school system has just crushed people and
Yeah.
really extracted the ability to be embodied. It's almost like a trauma, like we become disembodied during a traumatic experience. And here we
Yeah.
have day in and day out our whole youth where we're constantly being forced out of our body.
So I'm going to tell you something before we end. I know you have to stop it soon, but I spent 34 years of my life teaching at UCLA, in theater, in music, and in integrative health. The hospital knew about what I was doing, so they started integrating some of Alexander in the care of their patients. But basically, in the past 4 or 5 years, because of the pandemic, that disintegrated completely, and it's been a real problem. I left UCLA because of that. I felt I could not teach what I teach. They didn't want me to put hands any longer, and they put so many restrictions. The students would come in every class and say, do not touch my neck, do not touch my, whatever. They would put a lot of restrictions and stopping, basically. It just got to the point that I don't know what we're teaching.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was very sad, but I'm still teaching privately, so
Yeah, yeah.
it's great.
But and John Dewey tried to get this into the school system.
I know, bless him. John Dewey was amazing, and bless him. He's in my mind all the time. He really, John Dewey, Aldous Huxley, and I always think about them. They're part of my everyday life.
I love this history, and that like I can speak of very few people that understand these links. Somebody
Yeah,
needs to write a really interesting history on this stuff.
it's fascinating. These people were way ahead of their time, way ahead of their time.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on sharing this. This was so rich.
I will come back. I will come back. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Bye bye, Bryson.
Bye bye, Gene.